What is up, guys? Welcome to Truth and Transparency Sunday night. All new live. Yes, Sunday. Welcome. Come on in. At some point, you are going to have an opinion. So thumbs it up, thumbs it down. Definitely make yourself known. Also, use the comment section of the video once it is uploaded. Today's episode was going to feature, and it still potentially might, an interview, but either way, this interview will take place here once the weather gets better. And it is Bryan Kohberger's IGG expert, Gabriella Vargas. Really quick, for those of you guys that do not know, back in June, July, and August of 2023, the prosecution, the state, put in a protective motion. They put in a, what was it? I think it was like June, I want to say 12th, 17th, 16th of 2023. And it was the first time they disclosed that, hey, we actually employed investigative genetic genealogy. Nobody knew about this. And so, holy crap, wait, like what? So just remind everybody, the reports have come out. And so I'm going to use Hector here for a minute just to show you guys, remind you guys about a couple reports. But if you go through the Moscow Police Department, 314 different reports, the words investigative genetic genealogy do not show up. The words IGG don't show up. But on Blaker's report 93, he says that he goes to Othram Laboratories, but he never says what he's doing there. He is just simply dropping off a vial. If you actually read through it, it's kind of mind-blowing because, like, it's, what are you taking it there for? None of that said. It's just, hey, I'm dropping off some stuff over here at Boise. I was told to pick up a vial from the DNA profile from the knife sheath, and then I'm going to transport and fly it to Houston. But I'm going to show you guys really quick that June, July, August, September, October of 2023, 150%, it's money guaranteed. The state refused to disclose that they used Othram to do the investigative genetic genealogy. In fact, not only, so think about this. Bill Thompson knew that they were using IGG. Ashley Jennings. The whole damn, we had people testify what would happen like 2 years down the road, and they would testify, Detective Payne testified that, hey, all these people were in our briefs when we were debriefing in the morning, at night, that everybody knew that we were, going the route of using investigative genetic genealogy. And with that said, it was also Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings, which is really, really important because we all were wondering why in the world is now Bill Thompson, him and Ashley Jennings they need the Attorney General's office. Like, we need you guys. Well, why? Well, because they needed them for this specific reason. Okay. It wasn't Bill Thompson or Ashley Jennings that filled out on June 16th a 32-page, it was a 19-page motion. And it was actually filled out by Jeff Nye, the Special Assistant Attorney General Prosecutor. And then signing it to the left was William Thompson. No Ashley Jennings on here. And this was a motion for protective order. And so this was literally filed a month after the indictment for Bryan Kohberger. There was a grand jury that was sat May 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. They were supposed to have a preliminary hearing. So in this motion for protective order, this case arises from a quadruple homicide. Law enforcement found the DNA of a potential suspect at the crime scene, and the FBI submitted the DNA to one or more publicly available genetic genealogy services to determine potential relatives of the suspect. That's literally in the first two sentences of this motion. No, it was actually Othram that did that. Okay. Othram did that. So next sentence. The FBI then used common genealogical techniques to develop a family tree leading to the defendant. The Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian, Idaho, located DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. The Idaho State Police Laboratory determined the DNA came from a single source and that the source was male. Now, one thing that I've asked Gabriella Vargas is are you aware that there was blood on the sheath and that on that sheath there was, where they're talking about the male single source on the button? Were you ever told about the fact that there was blood on the sheath and that there was unknown male DNA mixed in with the blood of Kaylee and Maddie? What do you think her answer was? Okay, next. Again, in this protective motion. In this case, investigators used IGG to begin the process of developing a lead to the individual who left DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. The Idaho State Police utilized a private laboratory to develop an SNP profile from the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. Okay, so this whole time, now that we have the papers that we have and the reports and everything, do you guys understand? Bryan Kohberger was arrested at the end of December. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 10 months. And the reason I say October is because October 25th, 2022 was when Judge gave his order. And still at that time, Judge and nobody, when I say nobody, fuck, the state knew, who's this private laboratory? They never named that it was Othram. Okay. And this is very significant for this was and will be very significant for Ms Vargas when she's being interviewed by yours truly. Okay. Because now I said to myself, well, the response that Jay put in for the defense was on July 22nd. So just not even a week later in 2022. I mean, in 2023, makes it known that, hey, you guys uploaded the sheath, the DNA that you took from the sheath, you uploaded it to CODIS, right? And he says that the sheath was placed button side down and partially under Miss Mogan and the comforter. So if it's button face down, why he's saying that is because, okay, and nothing else was on that button side, like, and but he's saying that on November 20th, 2022, the Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian located DNA on the button of the sheath and performed STR analysis. Now, Judge in October of 2025, he states that he has no idea when, and it's right here in the order, he has no idea when IGG was even employed. Like, when did you start it? When did you start the process to say, hey, we're going to use investigative genetic genealogy? So, wait, come again, Leanna? Oh, yeah. Yeah, right here. On June 16th, 2023, the state filed a motion. This is Judge. The state filed a motion for a protective order. In its motion, the state brings to light law enforcement's use of IGG to find a lead after the STR DNA profile from the knife sheath did not return a match in CODIS. It is unknown to this court when exactly law enforcement employed the use of IGG. Okay, now if we remember, Bryan Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial because he had a pick. Remember? So if you don't even know when IGG was like utilized, right? That tells me we have an issue with Blaker's report 93 just because it was wrote up, okay, and just because it was available, it does not mean that the defense got it. I have no idea the date the defense got Blaker's report, but nowhere in Blaker's report does it say that it's being, I mean, you can kind of look at like what's Othram. Why would Idaho State Police be sending DNA, okay, off to Othram? And there's a date there and everything like that. So the reason that I believe that that report was not turned over is because of everyone saying we have no idea when this was done. Now, going back to the state, they're over here saying that we don't need to disclose any of this. It doesn't fall under discovery rules in Idaho. It's Rule 16. In fact, the state then says the genealogy conducted by the FBI resulted in a lead that pointed law enforcement to defendant, but it did not result in the creation of many documents or records. Again, everybody wants to ask the middlemans, why is everyone saying that the FBI did this? And you're so confused as to how this is so confusing. And it's right here in the paperwork. It's the state that claimed the FBI did it, not you guys at Othram. At Othram, you guys were known to the rest of the world as you guys couldn't cut it. Okay? But really, now I know why. And now other people that I'm going to be interviewing know why. Because when I was talking to Gabriella Vargas, it's like, hey, got a question for you. I have a huge timeline issue. I need to know everything about how long it would take to do certain things with this IGG shit because the timeline is really fucked. It's really tight, like super tight, right? Even to this day after what Kristen testified to, or not testified to, but told CrimeCon. I said, how about this? How about let's even back up this. Why? I said, I believe that Othram was the FBI's lab as well. So when Idaho State Police had that private laboratory, right? And that's what they were hiding is because what? FBI that's going to get revealed that they actually use Othram. I mean, how was this? What was this big plan? Like, what the fuck's going on here? But why the lies? You guys wanted to and use IGG, and it's so great, and we need to start using it more. You know, we need to start using it really early on because X, Y, and Z, because it's so great. So if you read this, okay, if you read what Nye put together and why he was asking for a protective order, okay, it's like, this is all fucking lies. Or is it? Because he doesn't know, right? He just got brought in. And so what, Bill Thompson's just filling him in on what to say? Bill Thompson's a witness. When they write up this for this protective order, they cite that they, see the DOJ policy effective November 1st of 2019 when they're talking about the fact that the FBI removed the SMP profile from the Genetic Genealogy Service pursuant to the United States Department of Justice policy. That's why there's not these, all this work that we can show you is because they were just following the DOJ policy. Interesting. Well, how about, let's see. Everybody knew the lab when this was signed. So to say that you utilize a private lab, they both knew the lab, meaning Ashley Jennings and Bill Thompson. So I believe that this is why Ashley Jennings' name is not on this document. The defense response proves that they did not have Blaker's report of him transporting the sheath, in my opinion. My guess is that he wrote it up, but it was never turned over. And why I'm like certain of it now is because Judge is over here and in October saying that he doesn't even know when they employed IGG. Remember, Judge would go on to grant some stuff. So here now, after they write up that they need this protective order, it's the first time that they ever mentioned IGG. One of the questions you would have heard tonight and you are eventually going to hear is, hey, Vargas, when did you get really rolling with this case? Huh. Funny you should ask, Lana. Like, just before I testified, not too long before I testified. Oh, why was that? Well, the defense didn't even know that IGG was used. The defense is putting in a motion for supplemental request for discovery. Okay. And the state is objecting to certain things. And then Taylor moves forward for a motion to compel. And that's what part of this was about. So when Jay answered, and they're like, the state's like, hey, we want a protective order. We don't want to have to disclose anything, nothing about IGG. Jay responds on June 22nd and saying, by December 17th, 2022, the lab analysts were aware of 2 additional male DNAs inside the house where the deceased were located, and another unknown male DNA on a glove found outside the residence. By December 17th, which is before the name Bryan Kohberger, okay? Before the name Bryan Kohberger. To this date, when he wrote this on June 22nd, 2022, or 2023, 6 months later, to this date, the defense is unaware of what sort of testing, if anything, was conducted on these samples other than the STR DNA profiles. Further, these 3 separate and distinct male DNA profiles were not identified through CODIS, leading to the conclusion that the profiles do not match or belong to Mr. Kohberger. Right? Right. People have been asking me, were you asked to perform IGG on these as, hey, Gabby, were you ever asked, hey, we want you to make some family trees? No, it didn't get to that. No. Was that something I think Gabriella Vargas was saying? Like, yeah, let's do our own and let's see what we can come up with. But immediately, she brought up the timeline to the defense. She brought up the loophole. She brought up that does the FBI know it? Because remember, they're trying to sell it. The state is trying to sell it that the FBI did this. Well, guess what Gabriella Vargas knows? In September of 2022, guess who signed a contract with the FBI? Othram to be their special lab. The FBI and Othram signed in September of 2022, like mid 6-figure contract. A lot of people, not just her, a lot of people knew that in the industry. So next, Jay says, while this was going on, the police were investigating many various possible suspects. Many of them provided DNA. At least one of them had his DNA surreptitiously taken from a discarded cigarette. Many also had their phones taken and downloaded. By November 25th, 2022, police believed the car to be a white Elantra and asked law enforcement to be on the lookout for one. Precisely how the police came to believe the car was a white Elantra is still unknown today. A report from an FBI analysis from the FBI dated March 21st, 2023 shows the analysis heavily relying on a video of a car heading in the wrong direction at the wrong time on Ridge Road. The state's latest filing admits that somewhere within all of this, they engaged in investigative genetic genealogy. So right here, admitting, like Jay's letting us all know, The first time we are hearing about IGG is June of 2023, and Bryan Kohberger did not waive his right to a speedy trial. He was slated to have trial October 2nd of 2023. Okay. And here's a bombshell where it's just like, we want a protective order and IGG. Like we used it. And so here it's just like, wait, what? And nothing that we have. Like, where are any reports? Okay. In this filing, it says that since they use investigative genetic genealogy using the DNA taken from the button on the sheath, and now claims that it was due to the use of this technique that it tipped local law enforcement to investigate Mr. Kohberger, the first time they're hearing this. It remains unclear what the police first relied on in focusing their investigation on Mr. Kohberger. No matter what came first, the car or the genetic genealogy, the investigation has provided precious little. There is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. There is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Kohberger's apartment, office, home, or vehicle. In essence, through the lack of disclosure and their motion to protect the genetic genealogy investigation, the state is hiding its entire case. So ready, listen to how crazy this is. Can you imagine if the state's plan was to act like they did not use IGG, and yet here we have the Middlemans and Othram and all these people talking about how great IGG is, right? And the state's plan was to not mention it in a single report. Do not turn over any reports like that. We are not talking about this. And then it comes down to realizing that, fuck, man. Well, wait a second. What did you indict Bryan Kohberger on? What did you indict him on? Because you had you were supposed to have the preliminary hearing, but you actually, hey, we're going to have a grand jury in May. Okay. Ready? Oh. The state apparently thinks that they need not explain how they came to think that it was Mr. Kohberger's DNA on the sheath. Right? The defense is expected to just accept at face value that the sheath had touched DNA just waiting for testing by all the FBI's Madrid resources. They are writing this thinking that the FBI did this. Okay? Additionally, the defense is to guess whether the state focused its investigation on Mr. Kohberger via a bizarrely complex DNA tree experiment or through its faulty identification of the vehicle involved in this case. You have to ask yourselves this, ready? They knew that Jack Showalter drove a black BMW. They went and got his AT&T timing advance, right? They were following him. They had a police freaking unit on his ass. They were surveying him. Okay. He had a black BMW. Did not have a white car. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Mr. Kohberger does not accept that. His defense does not need this information. Now, to begin with, the state apparently only wants to prevent Mr. Kohberger from seeing how the IGG profile was created and how many other people the FBI chose to ignore during their investigation. In essence, the state's argument is that if the later STR testing is accurate, then there is no reason to concern ourselves with how the state came to investigate Mr. Kohberger. Right? State's brief at 9. And that's exactly what they're saying. But ready for this? Now we know things that we did not know then. We know that Officer Payne gets up on the stand and says, we had nothing until there was nothing leading us to Bryan Kohberger until the words Bryan Kohberger from the FBI via IGG. And yet that is not in the probable cause. So how did you develop probable cause? We lied. What the state's argument asks this court and Mr. Kohberger to assume is that the DNA on the sheath was placed there by Mr. Kohberger and not someone else during an investigation that spans hundreds of members of law enforcement and apparently at least one lab the state refuses to name. Why do we have to protect Othram? Well, because Othram did both work. There was never this stop doing the work, turn over to us, and we're going to turn over to the FBI, and they're going to do this shit. In this writing by Naim, he is writing and saying that the FBI did and built this tree. Wait a second. Othram wanted, and what you're going to hear from Vargas is it's called target testing. When you're seeking out, hey, go get those 3 people and have them put in their DNA into this database. Spittin tubes and shit. The 4 brothers. All that shit. When I told her this, she had no idea about this. She's like, what do you mean 4 brothers? Because like I said, at the beginning, when they're just being brought in, they're testifying here for the sole purpose to get the state to have to compel the evidence, to compel their investigation. That's all these people were supposed to be doing here at this hearing. It was for the purpose to get them to compel, for judge to see like, yeah, dude, you need to turn this shit over. Like, you understand? So Vargas is like, wait, what do you mean 4 brothers? What do you mean they were asking people to spit in tubes? I said, oh, you didn't know that? She's like, no. And she's like, that's target testing, just so you know. And she's like, and if they were doing that, do you know how far removed you know how far removed that would have been? I said, you mean like, she's like, yeah, it's going to take a lot longer. You know, we just jive with how we talk. Like, so what are you telling me? It's going to take a lot longer? Yeah. Like, you're nowhere close. Target testing, they're supposed to get search warrants as well. Anyways, well, if you don't have to get a search warrant if you ask them and they just give it to you. But if you go ahead and you take it from them for the purpose to put it in, I mean, it's wild shit. Okay. They were nowhere close. Okay. And I said, what about this bootstrapping shit? She's like, bootstrapping? She's like, why? They don't need to do any of that if you have Othram. What are you bootstrapping? There's no bootstrapping. I said, why would it double in size when the FBI got it? She's like, that doesn't even sound accurate. She's like, that doesn't even make sense. Not when you're dealing with Othram. There'd be no purpose. Like, it sounded like people didn't know what they were talking about there when they were like talking. But she didn't know anything about that. That was never, again, you have to understand, they did not have any of the material. They were not provided anything because there was nothing, because they were holding it back. Okay. And what their purpose was testifying for, and her main purpose, right? I don't even know if she knew that it was her purpose. She can tell you all about that. But being asked questions about the loophole, being asked, is there a way to upload and for it, to be seen by databases that aren't law enforcement? Okay. Yeah, there are. Oh, there is. Yep. She told the truth on the stand. She's going to tell you about her experience with the FBI. She's going to tell you that Bill Thompson sent the FBI to her house. She's going to tell you that somebody, I don't believe she's going to be naming names, no reason for that, had literally sent text messages or something like that, messages. So how the heck could Bill Thompson who would have access like that? But I have like the screenshots of when Bill Thompson is writing stuff and talking about, well, there was colleagues involved. And it's like, colleagues are talking, guess what they were talking about? They were talking about the damn loophole. because people have proof. Because in this small little community, guess what? Guess what you guys are seeing in the Karen Reed case right now? People talking through text messages, people talking through emails. All that shit exists in this industry because you're talking to people that you're friends with, right? You're talking to colleagues. You're talking about cases. You're doing this. You're doing that, right? Well, I think Gabriella Vargas has some. I don't even want to say the words incriminating. It's what they did. You know, I'm going to play a couple of clips here, whatever. But going and visiting her and sending the FBI to her house where her little kids were, it's pretty fucked up. The FBI saying things like, "Oh, we work with your mommy," to the kids. It's pretty fucked up. The FBI doesn't work with her. They're not colleagues. Having black SUVs sitting outside and the kids, like, seriously? For her little son and her little daughter? That's some fucked up shit right there. Again, there is no way that Jay could be writing this on June 22nd saying, what the state's argument asked this court and Mr. Kohberger to assume is that the DNA on the sheath was placed there by Mr. Kohberger and not someone else during this investigation that spans hundreds of members of law enforcement and apparently at least one lab the state refuses to name. Because the state refuses to name the lab that they went to first. And I'm thinking to myself, well, then that means that you do not have Blaker's report. Because in Blaker's report, so for example, depending on how they were passing back this discovery, and if they could do searchable things as if they were like PDF, I don't know. But if you were to type the words in, I mean, there's going to be only so many labs that are privates you can go to. Okay. But I said, Vargas, if I was to tell you I was using Othram for something, what would you think? You're doing investigative genetic genealogy. Anything else? No. Especially if you told me like about the case and there's DNA. Yeah. Okay. So it wouldn't be like a, yeah, no. If that report would have been in there, Blaker's report. She said, let me see this report. I said, so there's no, on November 21st, I traveled from Moscow, Idaho to Meridian, Idaho to drop off evidence at the Idaho State Police Forensic Laboratory located at blank. After getting evidence checked in to the lab, I signed out for a DNA profile, which had been generated by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab. This DNA profile was collected from a knife sheath, which was found by Idaho State Police investigators from District 2 during the initial search of 1122 King Road. The sheath had been transported to the lab by ISP troopers. The DNA profile was stored in a vial, which was then packaged in evidence envelope. And so she's reading it. So they flew it there. I arrived at Houston. Okay. I traveled. I arrived at Othram. I handed the envelope with the DNA profile to a JF employee for Othram. We completed the chain of custody or chain of evidence. And she's like, well, I said, well, is this so? Another thing that red flagged is if Bill Thompson is trying to keep chain of custody from the defense as part of like, we object. Right here, it's talking about chain of custody. So she's like, yeah, no, they didn't have that. There's no way. And then I said, well, have you seen these people that have been testifying, like Detective Payne? And she's like, this is Bill Thompson knew the dates of all of this shit. How are we writing up? How is Bill Thompson writing up, and having his name signed on stuff that says a private lab, not giving any dates. And then Jay's over here saying, well, you had all these unknown male profiles. Why weren't you concerned with them? And she's like, I was like, if I told you that, hey, there was DNA at the scene in the bedroom, or there was 3 unknown males, or that on that sheet there was, like, what would you think? I would say, why the fuck aren't you testing that? Or what do you mean? It doesn't match them. Then it could be potentially multiple perpetrators. I mean, it doesn't seem like that they, yeah, like, what do you do? Like, I get that the sheath would be important, but the other stuff, they went ahead and said, so when I say they, the state, let's see here. Okay. So after Jay writes this whole thing, like, dude, you're crazy, you know, like, protective order my ass. Like, you just want to basically hide the whole case. The state responds. They have a reply in support still of their protective motion. And that was on July 14th. And so I showed Vargas this again. And right here, the defendant does not have a constitutional right to discover all aspects of the investigation. So the defendant contends that a massive investigation came to focus on him and him alone, and asserts that means that he has a right to discover ... the investigation that led to him, end quote. The context of his claim suggests he is asserting a constitutional right to discover anything and everything related to the investigation, but his asserted right finds no support in the decisions of the Idaho Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court. Again, I cannot stress this enough, but if IGG is so fucking good and so great, and why the hell would you ever go through these lengths, okay, to be hiding what labs are doing what? Oh, the Othram was both FBI and what? The state goes on to say that the court can use the process explained in the state's motion to verify the IGG information does not contain exculpatory evidence. Though a criminal defendant has a constitutional right to discovery, that right is not infinite, and it does not encompass the IGG information. Quote unquote, due process requires all material exculpatory evidence known to the state or in its possession be disclosed to the defendant. As the state explained in its motion, the IGG information is neither exculpatory nor material to guilt or punishment. The time frame is, and then, yeah, if multiple people were, came back because if, I don't know, Bryan had multiple relatives, where were they living? Again, the state says this, the family tree built by the FBI merely pointed law enforcement to the defendant. And then I'm just like, oh, yeah, so now you're also admitting here that you would have, your probable cause statement, there's no probable cause there because you're leaving this out. And the law enforcement just followed that lead to develop the substantial evidence of guilt that was used for his arrest and that will be used at trial. And then here the state says, moreover, as the DOJ policy on IGG explains, the FBI can only use IGG after the investigating agency has pursued reasonable investigative leads to solve the case and the perpetrator's identity remains unknown. Taking the sheath to Othram on 11/21 is not, it defies, it's completely opposite. The murders were on 11/13. You are taking a sheath to Othram on 11/21. Are you out of your fucking minds? But the state has the balls to try to put this in here to try to get Judge to think that that's what happened here. Because in Judge's order, he says, they don't even tell us when they started on to employ, to even use or to even think about going IGG. How the fuck do you write that in something like this and you're not disclosing that this is when we use that? What investigative? You weren't even doing anything with the phones that you still had to deal with the damn roommates and figure out why the fuck everybody's lying. How about that? How about why 911 wasn't called for 9 hours? I think you got bigger fish in the sea right now to figure that all out. But to just put that in there like that's what they did in this is just mind-blowing to me. And then to cite the DOJ and the interim policy, and the court should just disregard Barlow's declaration as a poorly disguised legal brief. Okay. And so Nye goes at Bicca Barlow and says that, for example, Barlow's declaration states as fact that the IGG information in this case clearly is Brady material and that the IGG search could yield a relevant and admissible statistic. And I said, yeah, it's because it could be multiple people would have been identified. So yes, potentially has Brady information. Okay. So they want to have, remember what this is all about, is that let's have an in-camera review and then you can decide, judge, right? And now let's remember what they did at the in-camera review. They didn't provide, they acted like they didn't realize that they didn't upload shit, okay? And they didn't upload Othrum's whatever and a bunch of shit. At the end of the day, though, let's talk about the four brothers and going and obtaining the DNA for target testing to upload into the databases, right? That wasn't the FBI. That was Othram. That should just tell you how far off Othram needed. Hey, put, and I'm telling you why Othram knew to say this. Because if you look, you're working backwards. And so what I asked Gabriella Vargas very simply was this. If you are doing something simultaneously, like here, let's upload it into and not cheat. And here, let's upload it over here and we're going to fucking cheat. Okay? Wouldn't I then be able to know what would be missing and what would be needed to be in the regular version of non-cheating? And you're going to need these people because that's what's going to connect here. Otherwise, without this, then you're not going to be able to get to this. So these people DNAs need to get in that database. You would know what's missing if you work backwards like that. You would know what you would need to be in the available one. And then she's like, let's start here. You have to pay a certain amount of money to say, hey, I'm going to upload a law enforcement kit, and you're going to have a receipt on that. And she's like, and that takes X amount of days just to even happen. She's like, when did they say that they got this name? Wait, and you're telling me that they needed four brothers when? I said, well, probably at the beginning of December. She's like, do you know how far off you are? I was like, well, I was told they were in the wrong branch too.
As a consumer are a match to a law enforcement kit, you cannot see that kit as a regular consumer. So law enforcement kits can see everybody in the database that have opted in. Now, Family Tree also has an opt-in out feature that is not the same as GEDmatch. You have to go into the settings and find it and toggle whether or not you choose to opt in or out. Many people are unaware of this. Another instance is uploading the data as if you were a consumer. You bypass the fees that you're supposed to pay to Family Tree DNA for a law enforcement kit, whereas a consumer it's free. And you also get full access to the database, including matches that have opted out. Does this happen?
Anthea just asked, has this happened? Does this happen?
Yes.
The FBI was so worried about what she knew about the people that could have been working on this. Okay. Remember, I just read that off to say, hey, in this motion, it's just talking about the FBI did all of this stuff. That's not true. Othram, before the FBI took over, right? And then everybody thinks that Othram's off the case, right? Fuck. I mean,
If I'm an attorney and I have a case where
why would you, let me ask you a question. Why would you need to hide Othram's lab? Why would you need to hide the name of Othram? Why did the state need to lie to Judge and make it seem like that the FBI? They're saying, oh, here, yep, right here from the order. According to Judge, this is what he thinks happened. Meanwhile, law enforcement continued to investigate the homicides. Okay, when they put in, he doesn't know the date. I said, no, actually on 11/13 to 11/18. So, which was before they ever put in IGG, because he thinks, meanwhile, law enforcement continued to investigate the homicides. They conducted a video canvass in the area of the King Road residence. Off of probable cause statement of Brett Payne, the quote-unquote video canvases revealed a white sedan that piqued the interest of investigators. The video footage was provided to a forensic examiner with the FBI, who initially identified the sedan as a 2011-2013 Hyundai Elantra, but later he indicated that it could be 2011-2016. And then writes this on November 29th, 2022. And I'm like, nope. After reviewing video footage and asking law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for the white Honda Elantra in the area, a 2015 white Elantra registered to defendant Bryan Kohberger was located in Pullman, Washington. I said, this argument proven not true by Payne on the stand. Can you fucking believe this shit? So 2 years then would pass, because this is the order on October 25th, 2023. It's like, yep, and then come later 2 years. Okay, 2 years in January, February, March of 2025, we have the police officers getting on the stand and saying, we did not know of him until December 19th. Oh, what about November 29th? Yeah, no, we didn't know. Oh. The fuck? The state's case alleges that with this information, law enforcement determined that Kohberger's physical description matched that given to investigators by a surviving roommate of the victims, and that Kohberger's cell phone, quote unquote, travel was consistent with that of the white Elantra, end quote, in the early morning hours of November 13th. Do you hear what he just says? He says that the travel was consistent. Based on this information, law enforcement believed Kohberger to be the driver of the white Elantra that was seen on video surveillance around the King. Well, I'm over here like, what? So you had timing advanced? Judge goes on to say that law enforcement also obtained cell phone records indicating that prior to the homicides, Kohberger's cell phone had utilized cellular resources that provided coverage. And then I asked Gab, I said, hey, on December 27th, when they would have went and got that trash and then they got it back in, how quickly on December 28th they would know that, boom. She's like, that seems really quick. That seems really quick.
Technology is utilized by law enforcement. And I want to know if they follow the protocols and rules. Do I need genetic genealogy information that you produce as a forensic genetic genealogist? Do I need that information so I don't know wanted to know what the process was, whether or not there was work product, if you wanted to verify, how did you come to your conclusion? Absolutely.
How about if I wanted to know what the rules were?
You would need the data. You would need to see the data.
Because it's the second more intense. I know. You have a question about another database, my third. Is that one that law enforcement uses?
Many in this industry have been known to upload to MyHeritage. Essentially, these databases, you're only bound by the terms of service. And there are workarounds in every one of the databases that somebody knows about and has told you about, or you yourself have tried. There's really no.
Okay. So then the tough question I was going to ask her, and I still am, but you guys can have a sneak peek at it, is, okay, is Author aware that the FBI goes rogue and then dumps all of this shit into databases that they should not, making it so that an F student could be able to tell you who that could potentially match to? I said, because I found a link, and it's a Homeland prepnews.com story. Author forensic sequencing lab chosen for one. And so here goes. FBI collaboration. In some cases, the FBI may utilize Author's services for the initial DNA analysis to build a genetic profile. And then their own forensic genetic genealogy team takes over to generate investigative leads based on that profile. This was the case in the identification of this John Doe known as Delta Dawn. So then wider federal engagements. Author's federal partnerships extend beyond the FBI. They have also partnered with the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs on initiatives like Operation Spirit Return to address missing and murdered indigenous people, and were awarded a contract by AFWERX, part of the Air Force Research Laboratory. And I said, the Air Force. I said, does that mean that they're using the DNA database for military? And she says, now you're getting the hang of it. To advance forensic DNA sequencing technology, according to Homeland Preparedness News. I said, well, why don't we all just give our DNA after birth and be in a system? The fuck? I said, I mean, if we're all going to go do all this shit, right, then we might as well just chip ourselves too. September 16th, 2021, Author closes an $18 million Series B funding round to help law enforcement crack previously unsolvable cases. Author is pleased to announce that it has raised an $18 million Series B funding round to further develop the breakthrough technology that is helping investigators crack these unsolved cases. The round was led by GigaFund, a venture fund known for its large investments in companies like SpaceX, with the new funding with the new funding round, Othram will accelerate the development of its genetic testing platform and expand operations throughout North America. Now, I was told by a couple different sources that Othram would buy out people and testify in their, like, here, I'll give me that subpoena. I'll take that subpoena off your hands, and here I'll go testify. And Othram was basically taking on those subpoenas and in exchange of X, Y, and Z. Okay. Othram and Sorensen Forensics partnered to develop a unified workflow for accredited forensic DNA testing. Remember, they weren't credited until I can't remember when. Now, I was also told that Othram wasn't the first lab to get it. I said, what? Yeah. Othram wasn't. So I said, what if Othram wasn't the first one to get it? Yep, that's floating around there too, that Othram wasn't the first one to get it. Now, in Judge's order here, he says some very interesting things. If you go back to it, and I kind of question this. Ann Taylor knew that it had to have known at this point. So think about this. Ann Taylor had to have known at some point after this, all this shit in June, July, August, September, October, then she's going to get her hands to be able to see some stuff, that they totally fucking lied. Okay. But they brought in the Attorney General's office out of Boise to come and, hey, we're going to need your help with this stuff. Because there's going to be a huge suppression. Because guess what? They should have been able to have a speedy trial, right? But you don't get any of this information. So you were lied to. You were lied to for 6 months on how your client truly was found. And you think that that's innocent, guilty? I don't give a fuck. You cannot hide how you truly got to somebody with probable cause, hide all of this shit, and then expect, wait, but hey, speedy trial. Either waive it or we're going to trial. What? You just hid all this fucking discovery. You hid police reports. So I think I would have never made the move to go to Boise. I would have never moved this trial because Judge is over here making calls for you. Literally making calls for you. And I don't know, when I say making calls for you, like when you read these orders, it's like how it should be. Like, yeah, this is ridiculous. In the motion for the protective order, it says from the state, notably, nothing about the SNP profile, the use of IGG, or a family tree was used by law enforcement in obtaining the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger, the January 5th, 2023 search warrant for Kohberger's DNA, or any other search warrant in this case. Okay. And then there was a footnote. At oral argument on August 18th, 2023, the court asked the state directly if any information obtained from the SNP profile, the use of IGG, or the family tree created was used to obtain any warrant in the case. The state represented that it was not, because the state was representing that in November 29th, to be exact, that we basically simultaneously, that's how we got his name, because of throwing the white Elantra, and we had people running this, and bring us back white Elantras and blah, blah, blah. That never happened, right? They didn't get his name. They didn't know his name. So, so judge asks this, and the state says, yeah, no, we did not. Okay. It says that the court has confirmed that nothing about the use of IGG or a family tree was used in the affidavit to obtain the arrest warrant for Kohberger or in the affidavit to obtain the search warrant for Kohberger's DNA. Now, while the FBI no longer has access to view much of the information it used to create the family tree, the state acknowledges that the FBI does possess the family tree itself, notes jotted down by FBI agents, and they constructed the family tree and any records created to the document removal of the SMP profile. Well, what about Othram shit? What about the private lab? So the defense opposes the state's motion for protective order, and on June 22nd, 2023, filed defendant's third motion to compel discovery. And this is what led to this whole thing when Ann Taylor's over here like, holy fucking shit. We need all reports generated by any lab that conducted SNP testing on any sample in this case, including from samples where unknown males, not the defendant, were identified. Because Ann Taylor, like any of us would be thinking, is that, well, they would have had to implore IGG for all these other unknowns, right? Right? No, we weren't interested in that. We weren't interested in anybody else. We weren't interested in doing this for anything else. Well, that's just absolutely fucking asinine. They wanted copies of all communications between the laboratory personnel and any other person or organization with regard to the instant case, including letters, memos, emails, internet posts, press releases. They're like, we don't have anything that says IGG. Did you guys even use it? Where are any reports that saying, hey, like poof? Now, Judge says, distinguishable from this case, the affidavit for a search warrant of the board tree case that they were talking about, his home contained a detailed description of the DNA process, including the use of FGG, which is IGG. So this has always been my argument, which is this. Idaho knew because they used it in their argument. The state knew when they used it in their argument, but IGG and the use of it has been documented in probable cause statements before. So why wouldn't you do it? And it says here that, distinguishable from this case, the affidavit for a search warrant of Bortree's home contained a detailed description of the DNA process, including the use of FGG. It is unclear if the affidavit for the search warrant for Bortree's DNA also included FGG. Prior to trial, though, Bortree filed a motion to suppress the testimony of the owner of the advanced DNA, arguing that the state failed, so that's listing these things. And then Judge goes on to say that basically, if other cases are able to have like suppression hearings and then they know about the use of it, then yeah, there's an issue here because Bryan Kohberger would be entitled to, the investigation that led to him. And with specifics says, he's saying that basically Judge says, hey, you can't really believe that I'm going to go this way when he says, in support of its argument, the state says that the IGG information is not discoverable. The state argues that the IGG information is not material to the preparation of the defense because defendant is charged with killing 4 people, not with being related to a particular person. I cannot fucking believe that they actually wrote that in a goddamn sentence. The IGG is beyond fucking material because it's the only thing that led you to Bryan Kohberger. Like, can you really say that in a sentence? I personally feel that this type of shit will backfire one day down the road here. Like, how can you write this in an argument? How can you say that, guess what? The state argues that the IGG information is not material to the preparation of the defense. It was material for you to arrest him. You just left it off the ticket and lied about how you got to him. This is unbelievable to me. It's pretty remarkable. Like, what? We discussed this earlier. Are there mods in here? We discussed this earlier. So, like, I cannot believe that I'm reading that. The mere fact that uploading the complete SNP profile into a publicly available genetic genealogy service led law enforcement to relatives of the defendant does not affect the strength of the evidence against him. The defense argues that the IGG information sought is material to the preparation of the defense because the defense must have an opportunity to challenge how the IGG profile was created and how many other people the FBI chose to ignore during their investigation. They also were talking about it's a timeline. And so, again, asking Vargas, let's talk about this timeline. What's up with the timeline? Well, thank you so much there, Tanda. $50 cash app. I do appreciate that. And she's like, your timeline's fucked. I said, so it is. She's like, absolutely. Absolutely, this is fucked. She's like, because no one's taken into account. She's like, and also Bill Thompson would know everything you have. The prosecutor is involved in every step. The Detective Payne involved in every step. You're discussing every step. Like, if you're even going to go ahead and do it. She's like, me as a genealogist, that's who I'm talking to the whole time. I'm talking to the lead investigator. And then when I think that I have something, they're supposed to go and match this DNA. Like, they're supposed to go and get his DNA. And you would not go and get something from a trash pull because you would have no idea what the fuck. No, you have to physically see him discard something, pick that up. And then that's what you would want to be comparing, is you're going to be testing. That's how everybody is trained. Everybody knows that. So while you're doing some trash pull, you have no idea whose trash is in there, and you have no idea whose is what. Like, that's just not how you would do it. I was like, have you ever done it like that? She's like, absolutely not. No, never. And I don't know of anybody who's done that. Okay. So let's talk about timeline here. So based on Kristen Middleman talking at CrimeCon, within 48 hours, they had built the profile, the SNP. 48 hours. She says, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's very interesting. She's like, more like a week or two. But 48 hours? I said, a week or two? She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah. I think that would take a week or two to build just the, that's what I said, like the SMP, like the wet work. The wet work at CrimeCon, 48 hours. They worked, remember, through Thanksgiving, and it was done within 48 hours. Okay? I was like, and then, well, yeah, then you're uploading it to, because it's a law enforcement kit, right? So you have to go through extra steps, which is extra days. You're getting a search warrant for that. I said, oh, are you? She's like, well, yeah. Like, what do you mean? We're like, yes, and you're paying like $500 to have this kit uploaded as a law enforcement kit. You're not putting this in as it's like your own fucking kit. Okay. And then I said, well, is that why they're saying things like they did it just like anybody else would? And then it comes down to like, who? They're over here. The state is saying that the FBI did that. Well, no, Hawthorne would have done that too, because if they had it first, right? If they're saying they had it first and they started on it, right? And they started, and then I told her about she's like, what she heard about that they asked people to put their DNA into the system. She was mind fucked. She said, well, Lana, that is, whoa. She's like, you're so far off. She's like, we're talking like fourth cousins. I said, well, how bad's that? She's like, that's fucking bad. That's far. Four cousins. Fourth cousins. Like, that's like your fourth, like, so she's like, that's like in the range of like fourth cousin type shit. You know how, like, think of all the sets of grandparents for those fourth cousins. She's like, you know, it would just be amazing just to see all the work. You know, because if they were truly able to do all of this is pretty remarkable. And it should be like, it should be fucking shown. Like, holy shit, take a look at this shit. You know? And so I'm just like, okay. And I was like, well, then they said that, yeah, they actually had like, so Othram called ISP and wanted the detectives to call people and ask them. And she's like, well, they were cold calling. I said, that's cold calling. She's like, well, are you doing target testing? She's like, it sounds like they were doing target testing to me. And that's when it was just like, that means you're far off. Okay. And we're not talking second cousins. Okay. But we're talking, if you're asking people to put their DNA in. And she's like, and what was the last name of this? I was like, yeah, the guy acted like he didn't remember. She's like, yeah, sure. They know. Okay. And she's like, and what happened? What'd they do? I was like, they didn't do it. So they called him and they said, first of all, they didn't believe it, that this is what it was for. And then when they had somebody else call to try to say like, yeah, this is what it's about. And she's just like, okay, so they did not upload their DNA. And I was like, no. She's like, did they try to go get it? Like, seriously, like, just go and get it? Like, you didn't know it was happening? I was like, they didn't say that they did that, no. What they said that they did after that is it was the FBI, well, it was decided on December 10th. She's like, December 10th, that the FBI would take over. And so therefore it was going to be, you know, closed down and that everything was supposed to come back to, I was like, have you ever done something where you didn't issue any type of a report or you have nothing? She's like, this is all very, very new. This isn't how we do it. So, and she's like, no, we didn't know of any of this. So anybody out there that's like, well, what was Gabby? Gabby, you knew? No, they did not provide them discovery. They didn't have any. There was no discovery. Okay. We are there simply to testify to like, this is how shit is supposed to be handled and done. And this is why somebody would want this material. And what it sounds like here is either you didn't use IGG at all and you're hiding behind IGG and you're acting like you used IGG. Okay. Or you were in databases that you shouldn't have been in. Because this is really, I mean, we're going to talk about ethics. None of this is illegal. But she's like, it's unethical. It's unethical to upload to whatever. And you're not supposed to. It's unethical to have a law enforcement kit and act like it's yours or that it's not a law enforcement kit. She's like, those take extra days, sometimes a week to be like approved because I have to get a letter from the investigating agency on a letterhead and give that. There's a whole big process to this. You don't just waltz in and just fucking flying around and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's just not what's happening. That's not what you can do. And she's like, and I'm always in constant contact with the investigator. Like, that's who I deal with. And when I'm ever giving a tip, like the tip, it's like this person may have this family. You know, I was like, well, they said there was 2 families that were Italian descent, blah, blah, and that was in Pennsylvania. She's like, yeah, it's not just going to be usually one person. You're going to be giving like, hey, this family right here, okay, there's, 4 cousins, and they're all first cousins, and they're in Pennsylvania here, and this is what you want to look at. And then you would start, okay, this cousin lives in he works at WSU, which is right down the road from that. You'd want to find out, did anybody go out there and visit? I mean, we were just talking about like, and she's like, so December 10th is when they're saying that the FBI took over and they were able to produce a name on the 9th. Yeah, she says that that timeline is fucking ridiculous. But so the defense argued that the IGG information sought is material to the preparation. And then, Ann Taylor filled out a declaration. I was like, well, hey, remember you testified and you were talking about people uploading the DNA, their shit into the databases that they shouldn't go into? Well, basically it came out that that's what they did.
Justification for it. You think you're doing the right thing, you want to help, and
Okay, right here. Do you guys see how it's not Bill Thompson and not Ashley Jennings right here? They brought the AGs in. You understand that?
There's a lot of information in genetic genealogy.
there is. It is a very tedious process. There is a lot of time, effort, and work that goes into it. In the end, what I provide to law enforcement is an investigative lead, and it is up to the agency to then take over their case and confirm that my lead is in fact correct.
How does law enforcement upload my opinion?
So the upload to these databases is you go to the website, you create a free account, you take the data file, you hit upload, and voila, you've got now a list of matches. It's the same as a regular consumer would do in both MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA. GEDmatch law enforcement uploads now through a separate portal called GEDmatch Pro, but there are instances of people doing work on behalf of law enforcement uploading to GEDmatch through the consumer portal as if it were a consumer kit.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I'm not sure if the prosecutor does.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Appreciate you.
List, if you put the subject's kit number into this tool that you're going to now analyze these matches, it tricks the system and allows you to see matches that you wouldn't have seen if you ran your initial match list.
And those
I asked Gabriella Vargas, I said, do you have proof that people in your industry have done that? Yeah, I do. I said, and you don't, I was like, so about that FBI just showing up at your doorstep. Oh, God. Oh, shit. So, and it was just like, fuck. Remember at the time, they were not trying to suppress the IGG and they wanted to be able to talk about it, remember? And they're going to show, because you're just going to show how shady the FBI is. And so that was the purpose of not flushing it out. Like, hey, no, we're going to use it. We want to talk about it. We don't want this suppressed. And then all of a sudden they were like, we're going to suppress it and we're going to go like, so, the reason being is you're going to show how shady the FBI was at all these different points. They did it with the phone. They were in charge of everything that the FBI was in charge of or had their hand in. It's fucked. It's compromised. Which then, when you're explaining that to the jury, who in the Karen Reed case, I think that was explained very well, that none of this can be counted on because the integrity is fucked, right? And that, like, here, if he's like the right guy, then why isn't all this shit, leading back to something? Like, you guys are cheating your asses off and it's still not getting you results. You know what I mean? And they're like, well, yeah, no, it did get us one result. It was his DNA on the sheath. I said, yeah, but you didn't take the time to test anything else. Like, you didn't even know if there was anything going to be on there because it's invisible DNA, right? But the blood inside the house that you knew was blood, didn't give a fuck about that. And you knew about that December 17th. And that's where you're just going to, that's what would have been difficult. Now, going back and looking at this order again, when you just go back and you review this, the state was saying that none of this falls under scientific tests or experiments. The state also argued that the family tree created by the FBI and the notes made by the FBI during the genealogy investigation cannot accurately be described as the results or reports. Like, how can you seriously argue this? Judge is over here saying, yeah, it is. Clearly it is. Okay. Now, it is undisputed that this is Judge. It is undisputed that the SNP profile itself is the result of a scientific test done on evidence in this case. That's what he said. And so I just got to think to myself, I'm like, damn, Anne, why did you go to Boise? Why didn't you keep it in Latah? What are you thinking? Especially when they brought in the people that they brought in, they're going to have the connections then down in Boise. Judge is over here giving you the, like, what I would think. I would have never moved this case. He's being fair. I mean, it's fair, right? He's now the next one, Rule 16b-8, is the police reports. The state argues that, quote unquote, the records related to IGG do not fit the description of police reports or memorandum. And this is how I also know that Blaker's was not turned over, because they didn't think that they had to fucking turn over the police reports. The state further argues that even if the records constituted reports or memorandums, this subsection only applies to records in the possession of the prosecuting attorney. I'm like, you're really going to argue? Like, Bill Thompson, Ashley Jennings, you know that Blaker took, and there's a police report that exists because Blaker took the sheath. Well, first of all, somebody else took the sheath to go get tested. Then Blaker went and he picked up the vial. But you guys are really writing in paperwork, acting like it's not in the possession of the prosecuting attorney. And the state does not possess the FBI's records related to IGG. They're trying to hide behind and just talk about, like, the FBI. And it's like, no, the state and local law enforcement have reports. The state has the reports of 100%. Homie went with Blaker. Again, the state acknowledges that the FBI has, quote unquote, the family tree itself, notes jotted down by the FBI agents and that constructed the family tree, and any records to document the removal of the S&P profile from the genetic genealogy services. It just, how do you make these arguments? However, without first viewing the IGG material, the court cannot say with certainty what does and what does not fall within the scope of Rule 16b-8. And it's like, if there are, well, great, we're going to have this in-camera review, but how do you know if the state is bringing, here's all of our stuff, take a look at it? Because they didn't. They lied. They did not bring everything in the in-camera review. And that's why they put another motion in 2 years later saying, and it's like, possession, custody, or control of the prosecuting attorney. As noted above, the state argued in its reply that the information in possession of the FBI is not within the possession of the prosecuting attorney. In a footnote in its motion for protective order, the state made the same argument, quote unquote, even if the notes jotted down by the FBI agents or family, like the state echoed this argument on August 18th, 2023, asserting that the state and the court had no authority to require the FBI to turn over the materials it possesses related to its investigative work on this case. They gaslit so bad because they made it seem like the FBI is the only people that had anything to do with this. And they hid the fact that the state and Moscow Police Department most certainly had stuff to do with this. And they hid that. They hid like they didn't have no knowledge, no nothing. And the FBI took over and have no idea what the fuck they did. That is ridiculous. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie. That's why I'm asking Ann Taylor, when did you receive Blaker's report? Because if you're going to sit here and tell me that you received it in January of 2023, then you need to fire your whole fucking investigative team. Because the moment that I would have read that report, I would have said, why is the sheath? They sent a DNA profile off to Othram. What's Othram? Oh my God, Othram's doing genetic genealogy testing. That's what the fuck they do. Then you call a couple of these people like a Gabriella Vargas and the Leah Larkins and the Bicca Barlows of the world, and you show this to them, and then you show them that there's nothing in this case. Like, but see, you have to get approval to show them anything, and that's why it was a protective order with the discovery. But you definitely are allowed to talk to your experts, and that's why Ann Taylor was like, I need to be able to explain stuff to my experts, so I need you to let them see stuff. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, wait, Othram. And then when you guys all start talking, oh, well, Othram works with the FBI. Othram, yeah, they do a lot with the FBI. Wait, why would the FBI take it away from Othram? You get what I'm saying? Othram had to do, okay, then what genealogist would they want to go with instead of some, But here they just keep talking about the FBI. And I said, fuck FBI. Bill Thompson knew all of it. ISP knew it, and Blaker's report 93. And then, here's Judge saying Rule 16b4 and Rule 16b5 require discovery of materials that are in the possession, custody, or control of the prosecuting attorney. But guess what? You're also supposed to further, it requires disclosure of material if the existence of which is known or is available to the prosecuting attorney by the exercise of due diligence. They knew. They knew everything because they did it from the jump. And then to see all this stuff now looking back, and you're like, Judge is writing in October of 2023, and that he doesn't even know the date that they employed to even go the route of, let's consider IGG. It was a week. 1 week. Remember, they were having daily sessions. And seeing this order, I would have never left Judge. And maybe she was looking at it like, well, Judge isn't letting us, he with the whole grand jury shit. Dude, if you would have shown Judge right here how, hey, remember how they told you that IGG was not used to get any of those search warrants, right? But guess what? IGG needed to be used because without it, they don't get to Bryan Kohberger. Detective Payne just got on the stand and we asked him, did you have anything about Bryan Kohberger before December 19th? Was his name ever mentioned? No. Everything was no. Did you know about the his vehicle over there at WSU? No. So you don't start investigating Bryan Kohberger until the FBI says his name, correct? correct. Now, you can never imagine, though, that another judge, when you explain this to him, okay? But why would I want to bring on a judge that he, think about it, like, if I have a good feeling with the guy and it just, they're saying, hey, we're not going to be able to get, well, guess what, you could have maybe had some options to, if it was going to be a sequestered jury anyways, to bring in a jury from, I don't know, but that would have been a really tough call for me if I was in Anne's shoes, because I'm getting, like, Judge isn't fucking us. And now maybe think about how he was just so happy to pass that case. So while the court has determined that the discovery of at least some of the IGG information in the FBI's possession is warranted under Rule 16, see how even his order just talks about the FBI's possession? It's because the order is based off of the motion that was filed. And the motion is lies. And Nye wrote it. Where's Bill Thompson? Well, Bill Thompson should be a witness. Ashley Jennings should be a witness. You guys, this is all shit. For the reasons articulated above, the court finds that Kohberger has made there's a showing that at least some of the sought after evidence is material to the preparation of the defense, encompasses results or reports or scientific testing or experiments made in connection with the case. Also, you took the fucking evidence and you passed it around like it was candy on Halloween. And so I was asking Vargas about that. I said, what's the problem? Like, she's like, this is the deal. Half of the people in the industry want to treat it like a tip. Like it was just like, if you called the tip line. She's like, but there's a problem with that. She's like, the average American, or even if you're overseas, wherever, you didn't get to use part of the case, meaning evidence from the case, to make and formulate your tip. So is this just a generic tip? That's what the CC Moores of the world want. This is just an investigative, this is just a generic tip. She's like, it's not a generic. How is this a generic tip? Hey, let me go and hit the tip line over here. FBI tip line. Hey, I'm going to need you guys to give me the Salbrite. Give me the Salbrite from the roommates, and I'll give you a tip once I go through it, and I'll give you a tip. You guys would laugh, right? Be like, yeah, okay, Lana, right? Okay. Well, so we're just going to go give vials of DNA to labs that make SNPs, and then here, you're going to use this to formulate your tip that's just generic. And we don't have to tell you that we even fucking use this. And I thought it was great because Ann Taylor then says, 2 years then down the road, she says, this David Middleman, he can't be testifying to this shit. Actually, Bicca Barlow put in writing, but he can't be testifying to that you would eventually got to Bryan Kohberger. That's basically saying that that's not a fact. You won't eventually get to Bryan Kohberger because he's saying that, oh, well, he's assuming that he's going to eventually commit a felony. Okay. And that they would know it's him that committed the felony, and that his DNA would be then uploaded to the, like, he in his disclosures, in how he was going to testify, he was saying it would be inevitable. We're going to get to this person eventually. You guys, those aren't expert opinions. Sorry. Now, so think about all of these lies. Think about all these lies. Then we get to, I went ahead and printed off then we get to this. Oh, this order from Hippler down the road. Ready? The IGG process essentially attempts to ascertain identity through genetic associations, right? The IGG was first performed by Othram Labs. How can you ever, dude? The IGG was this is for suppression. The IGG was first performed by Othram Labs, a company with which the Idaho Department of Purchasing had an existing contract for such work. Well, that's funny because 2 years ago, the FBI did it. Okay. Othram was asked to develop an S&P profile from Q1.1. So the first time, yep, Othram over here. This is this private lab. Othram. Upload it to the public genealogy database as permitted law enforcement entry and submit a preliminary report of its findings. Othram was not asked to ascertain medical information associated with Q1, nor is any evidence attest as such. Law enforcement did not obtain a warrant for Othram's work. This is in writing. Othram. Law enforcement did not obtain a warrant for Othram's work. You guys, that's crazy. You guys, we can use IGG, but think about this. And you want to know why? Because they wouldn't have probably been able to, right? The Idaho State Police delivered Q1.1 to Othram on November 22nd. So the first, like, oh, well, that would have been nice to know for Judge, right? So listen, on November 20th, they uploaded to CODIS. It didn't. Oh, and then I asked Gabby this. I said, Gabby, how long uploading it to CODIS? She's like, it's not like CODIS tells you right when you upload it, bitch, no matches. No, Lana, that's not how that works. She's like, first of all, it's no, upload it. It's going to take a minute. It's going to take some time. It doesn't tell you, no matches. Go on, drive it on to Othram. So the Idaho State Police delivered this Q1 November 22nd. Othram developed an S&P profile and searched Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch Pro. This work revealed 4 brothers of interest, all of whom were low matches. And so when I told her that, she's like, fuck, they're fucked. Low matches. 4 brothers were the low matches? To further its family tree building, Othram asked the Idaho State Police to contact one of the identified brothers to provide a DNA sample to upload into either of the 2 databases. And this is when I said, now I'm asking you this, why pick them out of all these people? How would you know who to pick to upload? I said, if you actually ran it side by side and cheating and not cheating, you would know where it broke off, right? Like you would be able to look back and be like, yeah, without these motherfuckers, we wouldn't be able to finish it. If we can get these people in there, it like, whoo, you know, wouldn't you be able to do that? Think about it. She's like, what else is in there? I was like, well, what else is in here is that despite Idaho State Police's request, the contacted brother declined to provide a sample. She's like, oh, that sucks. She's like, that sucks. On December 10th, 2022, members of law enforcement, including the FBI, had a meeting to discuss Othram's work. She's like, so the leading people in the industry couldn't do it. Right? As a result, a decision was made to turn the IGG work over to the FBI. She's like, why? Othram and the FBI, that's... She's like, to cheat. That same day, Othram was instructed to stop work and turn over its S&P profile and search results to the Idaho State and search results to the Idaho State Police. Othram did so, along with a preliminary report of its findings. She's like, that's funny because we didn't know that any preliminary report existed. We didn't even know that Othram was the private lab. We didn't have any of that. the FBI uploaded. I'm sorry. So then it was. She's like funny because that it was a secret, right? So the preliminary report did not contain any medical information associated with the SNP profile, but it would tell you how far away you were. Who fucking cares about the medical stuff? The Idaho State Police then turned the information over to the FBI, which was able to use Othram's profile to develop a larger SNP profile. She said you would need the raw data. She's like, you would need the raw, like, what do you mean doubled in size? I was like, you tell me. What do you mean it doubled in size? She's like, why? For what? For like what? The FBI uploaded the larger SNP profile to multiple genetic genealogy databases, including GEDmatch and MyHeritage, which purport to disallow law enforcement searches. She's like, I bet you that they were in the regular GEDmatch to begin with. I was like, yeah, like I've been saying. She's like, yeah, I mean, why pick those 4 brothers out of the fucking blue thin air? Like, hey, you guys, throw your DNA in that bitch. So stupid. At the time, the FBI had an interim policy issued by the United States Department of Justice related to IGG analysis and searches by its agencies. On the one hand, the interim policy required that investigative agencies conduct IGG searches in genetic genealogy databases permitting law enforcement use. However, on the other hand, the interim policy also stated it was intended only as an internal guidance and did not impose any legal restrictions on investigative agencies. She's yes, exactly. She's like, it's all ethical. Like, it's all ethical. What you know? She's like, but shouldn't that tell you that if your ethics were fucked with that, now you go back to your actual probable cause, and that's what one should show the other one, is that so they ethically and morally didn't told the truth in the probable cause because they didn't. And that is a violation, right? She's like, so he's making excuses? He's just like, well, it's not a violation of his rights. But he knows that they used a database that wasn't law enforcement. Like, you shouldn't have done it, right? He's like that. She's like, that's premeditated though, too. She's like, they talked about it. She's like, they discussed this. And now if they're not revealing who the genealogists were, I don't know. I think it'd be kind of important to know all that stuff. Why is it all a big secret? Next. He then, Judge Hilbert said, from the information it acquired through the database searches, the FBI was able to build a family tree and arrive at a potential match. On December 19th, 2022, the FBI provided defendant's name to Idaho law enforcement as a possible source of the DNA. Gabrielle said, if you read the last part of this, interim policy does not impose any legal limitations on otherwise lawful investigative or prosecutorial activities or techniques utilized by the Department of Justice, or limit the prerogatives, choices, or decisions available to or made by the department in its discretion. We both, though, said, I was like, yeah, but all of that may be great, is that the interim policy is not intended to, does not, and may not be relied upon to create any substantive or procedural rights or benefits enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States or its department agencies. She thinks that that's being interpreted incorrectly, because it's like, you're eventually going to get fucked with it. If not here, then with the probable cause. You get what I'm saying? Because you need to disclose that you used IGG if everything flows after this point, which is December 19th. She's like, that's like a cold case. Think about a cold case. 30 years. We're using IGG. Like we're disclosing that. And we use them in cold cases that we go on to successfully prosecute people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, 40 years later. I couldn't imagine us not saying it, hey, we used IGG and we just happen to go arrest somebody. Like they go and arrest somebody, but we never disclosed that we used IGG. She's like, this is an honesty problem. But hey, it doesn't matter, right? Because we got the right guy. No warrant was obtained for the FBI's work, and subsequent warrant applications did not include the IGG results to inform probable cause. As the investigation ensued, law enforcement discovered the defendant had driven from Pullman, Washington to his parents' home in a gated community in Monroe County. At the time, Monroe County's municipal waste ordinance, it's just, hey, we can do whatever we want. So, it's just all lies. Also, let's go back to one other thing I want to show you guys. So I went to pull back the AT&T warrant for the historical shit for you guys. And I think you guys might be interested in this. So on, remember this big bullshit about AT&T not being able to get historical records because timing advance only goes back 7 days, yada, yada, yada. Well, actually, I think another way to prove that this is completely fucked is AT&T mobility carrier request form. When that was filled out and emailed to the GLDC at AT&T.com, it was actually sent on December 24th, 2022, which if you go back 7 days, okay, it would take you to the furthest date that you can go back 7 days from that day is December 17th of 2022. So my question is how did they obtain that Bryan Kohberger was at CVS on December 16th, 2022, if it is outside of the 7 days, if you start on December 24th, 2022? They knew about him going to CVS. And, according to the Barnharts, he just stopped using his card, his debit card, which we know is not true. But, and so I looked again at this information, and then on the bottom of it, it says, remember when they said the historical records were only supposed to be from because this is the pen, trap, and trace, I believe. But remember, it was only from November 12th to the 14th. That was historical because at first they were just wanted a couple hours. So the historical records on the pen, trap, and trace, they wanted the call detail records with cell site locations, with the true call, with the NELOs, with the subscriber info. And they didn't hit that you have to the cell tower search. GPS pinging every 15 minutes. And then it says in the remarks, special instructions, it says non-disclosure order included, past 7 days of timing advance data as available. So go past the 7 days of timing advance data as available. Anyways, we showed you how that all. But I thought that was interesting. I'll put it on Hector if you guys want to see it, but it's crazy. So it was always just lies. What the fuck? You can just lie about shit. Jennifer T, new member. Cheers. How could this happen and Peeps now not charged? I don't know how you can, when anybody goes and looks back at this, they can say, you guys, Bryan Kohberger, fuck yeah, he said he did it. Guilty. I'm guilty. I killed everybody. Okay. I'm not up here saying that he did not. I'm saying that you should believe him. I'm saying what I think is absolutely fucking crazy is that we read these documents that were filed in 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. You read this shit and it's like, wait, what? How are you able to literally lie in these motions? And just so you know, you're not allowed to. That's what Cyril was talking about. There's a bigger problem here. There's a much larger issue. There's a much larger issue. Can you explain if you know why Antler agreed? I don't know why Antler did anything. To not bring in the IGG. No idea. Hopefully we find that out here soon when they start like unsealing stuff. How the hell would anyone know if he is guilty when everything is a lie? I'm only saying he said he did it, you know? I just can't believe that nobody cares about the fact that the Federal Bureau of Investigation lied, that the state lied, that they brought in attorney generals, attorneys to come in when Bill Thompson had to fucking deal with all this IGG shit. Because he knew. You knew about everything, Bill. You and Ashley knew about every fucking step, man. So to sit here and act like we don't have anything, nothing's in our possession, it's all fucking lies. And they wonder why, oh, you're going to have, this isn't a conspiracy. I'm showing the documentation. I'm showing the filings. This isn't a conspiracy. This is you saying this on this day. And then the next time it's like, it doesn't matter what we said before. It's okay. We can go back and just say whatever now. It doesn't matter what we said before. We can just make, so it's like, what the fuck are you, what? And this happens in divorces with lawyers. I mean, there's no accountability. There's no consequences. If this case didn't require Frank's, I don't know what case would. Heather, cheers. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Rochelle, I think that's how you say it. Comment here, just the fact nobody is even questioning the fact we know there are other people involved out there. He did it or did not. There is more unknown DNA and there than we thought. Whose DNA was it in the sink? Yeah, we don't want Brooke. We don't want God if we can talk about that. I mean, I think I was pretty blown away by Maury's interview of Dylan. I mean, that man, he didn't even see the crime scene. He didn't even know what the fuck he was doing. I don't even know if he's ever interviewed somebody before. Okay, I have no idea. None. I mean, if you notice, like, where do you see him interviewing anybody after that day? He doesn't. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. What's taking Hitler so long to release this next batch? What's taking Hitler so long? Because they need more time to just keep going. Here, let me give you a. This is, how many pages was this? I'm going to talk a lot about this tomorrow, but here, let me show you guys an example. Okay. Remember how I told you guys I was waiting on my big FOIA return? Okay. The city has received your request attached for the records related to this, blah, blah, blah. Due to the increased value of public records requests, the substantial number of records you are requesting, and the city's legal obligation to review and determine if there are exemptions from release of this requested record, the city will need a longer period of time to locate, retrieve, review, and prepare the requested records for public release. It may take the city more than 35 days to obtain the information, conduct a review, and provide it to you. Your request itemizes your records request using the identifiers of request A through U, which will be addressed because that's how I did it. So I'm expecting this to be like A blank, B blank. It says in regard to E. I'm like, fucking E. In regard to E of your request, Sergeant Gunderson has 5 body-worn camera videos for November 13th, 2024 or 2022. 4 of those videos have been paid for and are ready for release with the duplication fee as noted below. The 5th video has been paid for but is not ready for release as noted below. In regard to any pictures taken by his work or personal cell phone, a search was conducted and no records were found to exist. Therefore, this portion of your request is denied. Sergeant Gunderson's dash cam footage has a cost associated with it as noted below, $1,300 for his dash cam video. In regards to F of your request, a search was conducted and no body-worn camera was found to exist for Nate Rosendahl on November 13th, 2022. Nate arrives at the house at 11:30 p.m. on November 13th to take over keeping an eye on things. You're telling me this motherfucker was watching the door, the entry. He was scene security and he wasn't wearing a body cam? Nor because I asked for on the 14th as well. The cost, though, for the Humane Society paperwork is noted below. So they're telling me that Nate Rosendahl does not have a body-worn camera. In regard to G of your request, an initial search was conducted and the photographs were not yet found. If you still desire this record, please respond to this letter indicating so, and the city will continue to search for the records and provide you with a cost estimate. There are 2 body-worn videos for Officer Smith, which are noted below as a duplicate record. I said that Officer Corbin Smith was taking fucking pictures. He most certainly was taking pictures. We see him taking pictures. Okay? Guess who provided him the phone to take the pictures? Gunderson. So I said, can I just make you guys a video? Let me just point to you guys where the stuff is like. Thank you. Yeah, bring you back something good. I don't know, it surprised me. In regard to I and J of your request. Now, let me just tell you guys. I can't even believe this. Okay. My request G. Reference supplemental report number 1. Corbin Smith took pictures of the black backpack, body-worn camera on 11/13/2022, dash camera, and written crime scene log. So I said, I want the black backpack. It's just one goddamn picture that he took of that motherfucking backpack. I know it's there. Okay? He's taking photos of it. It gets opened. What do you mean those pictures don't exist? Okay? In regard to I and J, so I was Eric Warner, specific body-worn camera on 11/13/2022 when he went to his cruiser for 3 minutes to obtain gloves. Approximate time frame, 12:10 to 12:45 p.m. And then Eric Warner's body-worn camera from 15:28 to 16:28 is 3:28 to 4:28. At the back door, crime scene log was written notes down. And so they said, in regard to I and J, which I just read of your request, this request included with your request B and C. Okay. In regard to K of your request, a search was conducted and no dash cam footage was found to exist. Let me see what K is. is reference supplemental report number 3. Aaron Morris, body worn camera. The fuck it doesn't. He comes there and it might be from 5:48 to 9:15 on the back patio, as well as any written crime scene log notes. Motherfucker was there. It's in a report that he was there. He also didn't wear body worn camera. What? These people are at the door and not wearing body worn cameras? In your request to L of your request, Corporal Noonan's dash cam footage has a cost as noted below. Corporal Noonan's body worn footage has a duplicate fee associated with it as noted below. In regard to the quote unquote the actual search warrant Noonan's wrote up at the police station, the records you're requesting are Latah County's records and possibly under judicial seal. Your request for another agency's records is denied. But thank you. I will go to Latah County to get the search warrants. See what else. In regard to M of your request, a search was conducted and no records were found to exist for footage from the training room. That's where everybody was waiting before the interviews. So I wanted the training room where everybody was sitting there waiting to be interviewed. Okay. Therefore, this portion, so they're saying that there was no camera in the training room where everybody was waiting. But I did get the footage from the front door in the lobby. Thank you. Next, M. In your regard to M of your request, a search warrant was conducted and no records were found to exist for footage from the I already said that one. I meant you. In regard to U of your request, there was only one record for any radio communications on November 13th, 2022. The records you're requesting may be contained in this recording or it may not exist. What? The recording is a duplicate record with a duplication fee if you would like to receive it as noted below. There are 9 total body-worn camera videos from Sergeant Snyder. 9. The first 6 have been released and have a duplicate fee. The remaining 3 okay. The statutory exemptions asserted herein shall not constitute a waiver of any and all other legal bases or privileges, which may also be applicable to the documents which are subject to your request. In compliance with your requirements, blah, 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 blah. Okay. In regard to requests B, D, and E, G, K, L, N, O, P, and Q, O, and T, which is Sergeant Gunderson's body-worn camera footage 1 through 4. Corporal Morris's body-worn footage. Corporal Nunes' first body-worn camera. BF interview from November 13th. DM interview on November 13th. HJ interview with Mowry on November 13th. EA interview on November 13th. JD interview while in the police vehicle. Crime scene photos taken by Snyder. Snyder's run body camera and radio traffic. Out of all those requests, the city may charge a requester who is not a resident or an employee of a resident as defined the following. Insane. Okay. The city charges a $30 duplication fee per resolution 2025-20 for any data request of 20 gigs or less with an additional 5 for each additional 20. If you choose to move forward with the portion of your request, we are requiring full payment of the duplication cost for the requested records in the amount of $30, which is Warner's second body-worn camera, Officer Noonan's second body-worn camera. So if you add up all these things, it's like 30 times whatever, okay? Then, in regards to the records listed below, listen to this shit now. I was like, oh my, fuck me. Ready? So, please understand that an exact amount cannot be determined at this time, and that the final total due from you may be more or less than stated herein. In regard to requests A through C, based on approximately 15 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 270 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $275.67 for 285 minutes of staff time for Officer Warner's dash cam footage and the crime scene log. Next. In regard to your request E, based on approximately 15 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 300 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $388.73 for 315 minutes of staff time for Sergeant Gunnarson's dash cam video. In regard to your request F, based on approximately 5 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 8 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $11.68 for 13 minutes of staff time for the Humane Society paperwork. In regard to request G, based on approximately 15 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records for an estimated 648 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $808.88 for 663 minutes of staff time for Officer Smith's dash cam video. In regard to request in regard to request L, based on approximately 15 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 210 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $247.65 for 225 minutes of staff time for Corporal Noonan's dash cam footage. What do you think that you have to redact? For 1 hour is 60 minutes. 1 hour. In regards to you, based on approximately 5 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 8 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $13.50 for 13 minutes of staff time for text between Snyder and Mowry. In regard to request U, based on approximately 15 minutes to search for and retrieve the requested records, with an estimated 990 minutes for redacting, legal review, and administrative tasks, the city estimates that this request will cost you approximately $1,242.72 for 105 minutes of staff time for Officer Snyder's dash cam footage. Dash cam. Dash cam. A dash cam. Yeah, this is getting sent to a lawyer. Unbelievable. A dash cam. Now, please note that there will be also a charge for approximately 2 hours and 30 minutes for administrative tasks for any records you wish to proceed with. 2 hours and 30 for what? We are requiring a deposit of 1/2 of the estimated cost in order to begin review of your request, with the balancing being due prior to the information being released. Please note that there will be also a charge for approximately 2 hours and 30 minutes for administrative tasks. What in the fuck? What the fuck would need to be redacted from a dash cam? A 60-minute dash cam. What would need to be redacted? And 15 hours to redact an hour of dash cam. And I'm over here like, wait a second. Back up. Back up. What if you are a resident of Moscow? It'll be cheaper for me to rent a room there for a couple months and pay $400 to have a room over there in Moscow. Okay. Whoa. So it's hilarious, but I don't know what you think, like what you think that you need to redact. What the fuck do you need to redact? You guys, this is not even crime. I could see if you need to go in there and you need to, I mean, if I'm 9,000 photos, okay? 9,000 photos. What do you need to redact on a dash cam? Because let me make sure I'm clear here. The whole purpose that I'm asking for a dash cam is so I can see who is walking where, okay? So, and what things are being said. There was a couple different police vehicles literally right outside of the Shark Tank house. Their dash cams are focused like, you know, there's stuff that you can see. And I wanted to test it, and I'm like, okay, I only want 5 minutes. I want 5 minutes of the cam because I just want to see the angle. I don't even know if I need it, you know. But if you think that I'm going to pay for something, and then you're going to hand me something that has all this redaction and what? So I need a sample of what we're talking about here. But whoever would just pay for something with not even knowing, like, yeah, you think I'm going to pay you $1,300 for a body cam that I have no idea what's going to be on it? Said nobody ever. Like, so you're going to disclose, like, what type of redactions are you planning on? You know what I mean? Like, hello, like, no. So I was just literally, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, what am I asking for? That's crazy. What was that big one? Which one was that? 13? What did they want? 1,300? Which one was that? Okay, yeah. Request you. This is what request you said. Request you. Reference supplemental report number 4. Ryan Snyder body-worn camera on 11/13/2022. Ryan Snyder took pictures with a camera. I want these pictures. The interviews obtained on his body-worn camera while neighborhood canvassing of King and Queen, and written notes of those interviews. Specifically, interviews and time spent at 1112 King Road with when he obtained the SD card from the light bulb camera. All radio communication made by Snyder to Mowry pertaining to this camera, as well as any dash camera or body-worn camera audio revealing any information that was passed along to Detective Mowry pertaining to this light bulb camera. Ryan Snyder interviewed a BP witness about a dog barking at 4 a.m. and a witness named PC at 1112 light bulb camera place. I want the text messages between Snyder and Mowry about light bulb camera. I want the text messages between Snyder, Mowry, and anybody from 1112. Like, dude, whoa. You guys have already turned this over because Ann Taylor would have asked for all of this. If they didn't want anyone to see the lies, they should have kept the docs. I just want to look into some stuff. I said that I wanted the SD card itself. I want a mirror image of it. I want a goddamn mirror image of the SD card because I don't want the 11/13 date anymore. You guys, I'm interested in these days that they say that are the 12 days or the 23 days of this white car, you know, being and hitting off of the cell phone towers. I want to look at those days, okay, and see if I can see this beautiful white Hyundai Elantra just cruising around town and fucking being caught on this camera. Like, that's what you would be doing with your time. If I was on the prosecution, if I was a police officer there, I'd be like, listen, motherfuckers, we're going through these videos and we are finding, like, here, we already have the days where he's pinging, right? We have the times, right? But then guess what? Fuck, that means that we have the timing advanced, right? So we can't act like we have those. But I want the dates that you guys said that he was there. And then so why aren't you just looking and seeing? Because I'm telling you that white car would be there. Right? You think that you're going to go through an SD card that doesn't even really belong to you, belongs to some fucking broad over there on 1112? Like, do you want me to just hit her up? Be like, yo, do you have a copy of that? I'll give you $100. You know what I mean? So any white car. Let's just see a white car. Fuck. You the Molly thing. I already have Molly's in here. Molly's is already done. This is just stuff. This is just new stuff. Like request, like my S here. S. Josie's on a vacation phone. Reference Maori Supplemental Report number 41. MPD's recorded audio interview of Josie's boyfriend that was brought to the station, who nobody seems to know who the fuck he is. Josie's on a vacation. Molly's already been handled. Molly's is coming out. Molly's is paid for. This is just, I said, okay, obviously, because I try to be transparent with these people. I said I wanted Noonan's dash cam from 11:55 a.m. to 7 p.m. because I think that he would have the way that they park their vehicles and the dash cam's on, and according to her, his dash cam was running. And I don't know if they're like, is she trying to see the bodies? You guys, I'm not at all. I want to see the people. I want to hear the people. Okay. And if I was trying to see the bodies, I would have went past 7. Dumb dicks. I'm not. And if I was trying to see the bodies, I would know and narrow it down appropriately. Okay. I'm trying to hear what the communications are with the officers, and did they end up going back to the house? Did they get the girls anything out of the house to go to the hotel with? I mean, these girls had nothing. So somebody would have to go into the house to get Dylan and Bethany some of their shit, medication or, I don't know, contact solution. I don't know what the fuck, but something. When did that happen? And I want to see if Jack Showalter truly comes down like he says he does. In the Noonan's body cam, where his vehicle is, you can catch some shit. So I just can't believe that they think that they're not gonna, hey, we have to go through it. Go through it? Go through what? Go through what? The fucking dash cam is facing a public roadway. A public roadway. And it's running, and there's no expectation of privacy. What the fuck is going on around here? It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Molly, man, I can't wait to see Molly's. They better not blur her face out. I'm not paying. This is extortion. This is straight up extortion. I said this to somebody, and they're like, they're extorting you. I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm getting extorted. Because you're telling me if I lived in Moscow, I wouldn't have to pay anything? Okay. Well, I have a lot of friends that live there, so they'll just put the request in. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm not dumb. I'm not going to I'm gonna work smarter, not harder. I mean, that's stupid. I've just never heard when we were asking for stuff like back in the Chris Watts days to get all those body cams out. When we were this is almost like a way like you're guaranteeing that it doesn't come out because it's costing a fortune. I mean, you got these those little recordings of like Dylan and Bethany and stuff in those. Let me see how much they broke that down to. Let me see. Where did I ask you? That's stupid. It's really cheap when you're only asking for, like, when you find out someone's interview is only like, 13 minutes or 15 minutes. Like, but when you're asking for something that, hey, it's already recorded, you just have to drag it. Okay. So I'm going to put a nice little letter together because I don't even know if this is legal. This seems like it's not. How about this? I've been trying to get the Bryan Kohberger. Why hasn't the Bryan Kohberger interview come out yet? If I was the family, I'd be so pissed that has not come out yet. And it's not because nobody's not asking for it. I know that I've asked for it. Where's the Bryan Kohberger interview? Where is Bryan Kohberger being interviewed? Where is it? We should just sue them. So anyways, that's all. That's all I have. I'm going to be talking about it more. Ms Vargas will be back. Like again, I said, I felt bad, but I gave her time. But I want her to come on when she's feeling, good. So if I was these families, I'd be like, put out fucking Bryan Kohberger's interview. I mean, who do we think's going to drop that? So also, I just think it's interesting that, so you're telling me that the Idaho Statesman and anybody in Idaho that has, whatever, they have the opportunity to the items, money wise, like they don't have to go through any of the hoops, anything that I would have to go through. I was like, that's interesting. So all I have to have is like somebody that lives in Moscow, Idaho, requesting my shit. Okay. Bullshit. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Over and out. Thank you, moderators. I think I hit up everybody that I want to say thank you to. Fiji, Donna. Thank you for helping us understand it. Thank you very much. Deanna, I wish I could explain if I know what. I don't. Hopefully one day. I think she should write a book. I think Aunt Sarah should write a book when she retires. All right. Thanks again, guys. Peace out.